This is a video about Ancap, and I should say at the beginning that some people are of the view that Ancap should be defunded. I'm not one of those people, but I do think that there are some things that Ancap might do a bit differently. Ancap, for those who need a reminder, is the Australasian New Car Assessment Program, and its job is to assess the safety of vehicles and give them a rating based on a number of stars, with 5 stars being the best and then 4, 3 and so on. The motor vehicle as we know it, or the motor vehicle using an internal combustion engine, has been around since about 1886. And it wasn't until about 1965 that safety became a feature, or became something that motor vehicle manufacturers were concerned with. And that happened because in 1965 an American lawyer and consumer advocate and later environmentalist named Ralph Nader released a book called Unsafe at Any Speed, and the general point of his book was that the Chevrolet Corvair was such a badly designed and engineered and built car that it was unsafe to drive at any speed. And as a result of Ralph Nader's work, safety began to become a feature in cars, and also consumer laws came into effect, and in the United States the Department of Transport was formed, and the National Highway and Safety Administration was formed. So when you go to buy a car, you think about a lot of things, and some of the decisions you make are economic ones, and some that you make are decisions with the heart. But I hope that somewhere in there safety is a consideration, and that would in part be, as I say, because of the work of Ralph Nader. Now, in Australia, any vehicle that is sold in Australia must comply with what are called the ADRs, or Australian Design Rules, and they cover things such as the safety, the anti-theft mechanisms, emissions, fuel efficiency and so on, but they also cover things like reversing lamps, side door latches and hinges, seat belts and anchorages, direction indicators, safety glazing material and other things. So just about any aspect of the car that you think needs a rule about it, then there is an Australian design rule that covers it. What they don't do in those Australian design rules is rate the safety of the vehicle, and that's where Ancap comes in. Ancap is part of a worldwide network of similar bodies. The one we're probably most familiar with besides Ancap would be Euro Ncap, which is the same body, only it's based in Europe and presumably has a bigger budget and more cars to test. Ancap, by the way, is funded by the Australian government to the tune of about $16 million, and in my view, and I think in anybody's view really, when you are spending $16 million of anybody's money, but especially the taxpayers' money, you ought to spend that money in a way that does the maximum good for the most number of people. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment. It is possible for a car to be sold in Australia that meets the Australian design rules, but would in fact earn 0 stars when it comes to safety. And it is also worth noting that it is not mandatory for vehicles to be tested by Ancap. In other words, manufacturers do not have to submit their vehicles for testing. And as I said, even if your vehicle got a 0-star rating from Ancap, it could still be sold here. And you think, well, how would that happen? Well, for example, the Mahindra Scorpio from April 23 onwards, and you'll see some images of this in this video, and it has a number of variants which started around $35,000 and go up to about $60,000. It scored 0 stars, and it scored 0 stars in part because some of what Ancap says in terms of ADAS that should be present was not present in the base model. And some other features to do with electronic safety and so on were not present in any of the models, and therefore the car received 0 stars. Now, as I said, Ancap's job is to procure cars and smash them, and what they do is they look for what happens to the vehicle in head-on collisions, what happens with side intrusions, both on the passenger side and the driver's side, rear-end collisions. They're looking at 4 factors. Those factors are the safety, the integrity of the vehicle itself. In other words, does the cabin hold up and do the passengers in the cabin protected? The occupants in the front row of seats and the second row, and if there's a third row of seats, are they protected? What provisions are there for vulnerable road users like pedestrians, cyclists and motorcyclists? And then they look at and increasingly they're looking at this, the ADAS, that is the Advanced Driver Assistance Systems. Those are the series of warnings, beeps, bongs and so forth that you hear in modern cars and that many reviewers complain about being intrusive and turn off, but warn drivers about the car deviating out of its lane, the fact that there's a pedestrian behind you, the fact that there might be a child sitting in a driveway when you put your car in reverse and so on. All of those warnings are considered essential items to be in cars, and they are meant to be on by default. In many cars they can now be turned off, and in some cars with a favourite setting they can be turned off permanently. So it seems to me to defeat the purpose of them if they can be turned off permanently if you have a favourite setting. But my issue with Ancap is that I think sometimes their priorities are wrong, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Recently they made a press announcement to say that the Hyundai Ioniq 9 had achieved 5 stars in Ancap testing. Now the Hyundai Ioniq 9 is a 7-seat fully electric crossover SUV people mover type vehicle that costs $140,000 in top spec plus on-road costs. It is the flagship vehicle of the Hyundai fleet, so you would expect that it would receive 5 stars. It is in every respect almost exactly the same as the Kia EV9, which is $135,000 in its top spec plus on-road costs, that also received 5 stars. Since they're both from the same company and they have very similar specifications, and in fact when you look at the pictures in this video you'll see that they're almost identical. Now these two cars have been tested. One car that has not been tested is the Toyota Corolla, which came onto the new version of the Toyota Corolla, which came onto the market in January of 2025. So, okay, it's only been on the market nearly 10 months. When I'm making this video, it's mid of September 2025. But it has not been rated. Not has received 0 stars. It hasn't been tested. Now, the Ioniq 9, if it's having a good year, will probably sell about 300 copies, 300 units in the whole year. If we assume that 7 people travel in that vehicle, that's 2,100 people are going to travel in that vehicle, times the number of days or the number of kilometres they might travel in it. For comparison, the Toyota Corolla, I believe I read somewhere, they sell 22,000 of those vehicles in a year. It's a 5-seater vehicle, so let's assume that even only 2 people sit in that vehicle. That's 48,000 people are going to travel in that vehicle, times the number of days they might travel in it or the kilometres they might travel. When you're spending your money to assess cars, surely one of the jobs of Ancap is to assess the vehicles that people are most likely to buy and be in and travel in, and give those vehicles the highest rating, or give those vehicles their rating, rather than cars that are going to sell 300 units a year if they're doing really well. On the subject of giving them a rating, on the windscreen of all cars is a sticker that tells you about energy consumption. Perhaps the same sticker ought to carry the number of stars the vehicle has. When a vehicle gets 5 stars, the manufacturer will want to trumpet that as being part of their marketing strategy. When the vehicle gets less than 5 stars, they're not so keen to market it at all, and vehicles, as I said, that get 0 stars but can still be sold, they wouldn't mention that at all. But you can find out how many stars your vehicle has if you go to the Ancap website and type in the name of your vehicle into their search engine. But it would be better if you didn't have to do that, if you simply looked on the sticker, the windscreen sticker, and next to the number of stars it got for energy efficiency, there was a number of stars that was given for safety, and then you could go to the website. So before you put your money down, you could go and look on the windscreen, see what the safety star rating is. You could then go to the Ancap website, look up the vehicle and see where it earned its most stars and in which areas it might be deficient, and then decide for yourself, well, I don't care that it doesn't have all those ADAS things, but I do care that it has good strong brakes, I do care that it has a good crumple zones, the cabin is well protected, the seat belts are properly anchored, the seats are properly anchored and so on. And I'm saying this and giving you an example of the MG3 that has been upgraded from 3 stars to 4 stars because MG has added some more ADAS to it, some more electronics. But in the 50 km/h head-on smash, the driver's seat, or part of the driver's seat, became detached from the vehicle and was basically flopping around inside the car, which means that the driver, is not safe. And the vehicle is therefore not as safe as it ought to be. So those are my thoughts about Ancap. If you have a comment, leave it in the usual place, and when I become aware of it, I will respond. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.